Oregon football did not make the cut for the number one in-state recruit in the class of 2023. It's not terrible news, but it's not great either. All recruiting talk coming your way. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster and lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Like, comment, subscribe wherever you're listening to or watching the show. I appreciate the hundreds of you out there who have already done so. We're almost to 500 subscribers on the YouTube channel, which is way more than I thought that we'd be at right now. So thank all of you for doing that. So let's get to the recruiting news. And unfortunately, no John Garcia this week. He'll be back next week. He is moving, so he's a little bit busy. Any of you who I assume most of you have moved before know that it's quite a hassle. It involves quite a bit of work. By the way, if you're wondering where I do play-by-play, it's for this school right here. I was on the golf course wearing this shirt, and I thought, you know what? Why not rep the school that I do play-by-play for, that being Southern Utah University, that played Oregon back in 2017. Yeah, that sounds about right, at Autzen, and blew them out of the water, of course. But the big news right now is that Riley Williams, four-star tight end from Central Catholic High School in the Portland area, who is the top-rated recruit according to 24/7 Sports out of the state of Oregon in the class of 2023, does not have the Ducks in his list of 3 final schools. He was supposed to visit this weekend, actually. And also, before I forget, later today, Tyler Turner, four-star safety, who has a crystal ball for the Ducks, is going to announce his commitment. That will be way after this episode drops. We'll talk about that, which way it goes on tomorrow's episode. But Riley Williams was supposed to visit the Ducks this weekend on June 24th. Instead, he cut his final teams down to 3. It's Ohio State, Bama, and Miami. So some really big-time schools out there that are going after this guy. That's the sort of player that he could potentially be at the tight end position. And, you know, it's really surprising that neither Oregon school is after this guy. Maybe less so with Oregon State when you look at the caliber of schools that are recruiting him. But Oregon's been after him for a while. I mean, this is a guy whose name was, you know, getting tossed around every now and then on the recruiting sphere when Cristobal and company were still there. So it's no surprise that they've continued to recruit him hard as he has gone cross country down to Coral Gables at Miami. But this is just not something that has happened very often, you know. And Trajan Williams, a four-star safety in the class of 2022, who's coming in this year, who haven't heard a lot about so far. I don't think he's hit the practice field yet. I think he's enrolling in the fall. You know, that's another name that, you know, I was talking about safeties yesterday that you might have to look out for in the coming years. But, you know, when he decided to go to Oregon, I talked about how important it really is for a school to be able to recruit the talent that's in their own backyard. Now, for Oregon, it's slightly less crucial because there isn't an overabundance of talent in the state of Oregon at the high school football level. It's not a very populous state, and, you know, everyone's concentrated up in the Portland area, and there aren't a ton of schools up there that are known for producing, you know, a big time college football prospects year in and year out. You have a Central Catholic, a Jesuit, a Wesleyan, every now and then maybe a Lake Oswego, but the first 3 really are, you know, Jefferson as well can put out some players. Those are the places where you tend to have the most in-state talent coming from, and Williams falls into the Central Catholic category. But it's never a lot of players, and it's never usually a huge big-time prospect. And Herbert, of course, came from the state of Oregon. He was only a 3-star guy, but I think that's because he committed to Oregon early. But I'm pretty sure the Ducks were his first Power 5 offer. You can correct me in the YouTube comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is correct. So, you know, losing the top in-state recruit in the class of 2023, it's not great. Now, it is just one guy. If it starts to become a recurring trend, then you can start to ask questions. But I don't think this is, what's going on in the recruiting trail? Are they doing something wrong? Is their vision, for the Ducks not hitting home with in-state recruits? I think we saw in the class of 2022 that's not the case. Williams just really seems to be a guy who is dead set on leaving the West Coast to play his college football. And some guys are just like that, right? Jaden Rashada appears to be like that. He took Oregon out of his top 5. I don't think he was ever seriously considering USC. Now, they also have Malachi Nelson, so maybe that was a part of it. But there were no other West Coast schools there who, really made it into his top 7 or ultimately into his top 5. There were none on the West Coast. So some guys are just wanting to go elsewhere and for whatever reason are drawn to outside schools. So I would consider this more of a one-off because the best recruits in the state of Oregon have tended to come to the Ducks. Alex Forsyth comes to mind. Obviously he was, back a few years, but I'm just thinking about, in-state talent that has come to Oregon and had really good careers. And Forsyth from West Linn certainly falls into that category. But, Oregon as a state is not like a Washington even, which I think is becoming a burgeoning recruiting power, or in Arizona. Obviously, it's not as big as a California. I think Oregon's kind of comparable to Utah, but I kind of feel like Utah has even got more talent nowadays at the high school recruiting ranks or at the high school football level than the state of Oregon does. So you want to have the top guys in your state coming to your school more often than not, but you're not going to get all of them. And this is just one where the Ducks are left out of the mix. It's a pretty big surprise. I think everybody was kind of caught off guard because he's had Oregon in the mix for so long and you're from the state. And it's certainly not something that I expected. But, from a recruiting standpoint, it makes me go, all right, that's not great, but not a disaster. From a roster standpoint, I don't think this is a position of need at all right now. It's not as if you don't want to continue to bring in high caliber players at every position every year, but some position groups are more pressing than others. And tight end is just not one right now where the Ducks have a really pressing need. A name to watch out for in the class of 2023 in terms of tight ends is Walker Lyons. He's been offered by the Ducks. He's from the state of California, from the Folsom area. And, maybe now that Williams is going to go elsewhere, the Ducks get on the trail for him a little bit harder. Right now on 24/7, they're listed as, quote unquote, cool, in that they've made an offer, but that they aren't aggressively pursuing him. And I think they were going after Williams a little bit harder, but maybe Walker Lyons, a guy who doesn't have a timeline, at least that I'm aware of, or an imminent recruitment, at least that I have seen. Maybe that's a guy that the staff decides they want to go after because they do want to get a tight end in the class of 2023. But there's a lot of youth and there's a lot of talent in the tight end room, including a couple guys who you know about and the names, but we haven't seen a ton from them for various reasons, mostly injuries. But the depth in the tight end room is also a part of that. And I think that there's just I love our tight ends. I really, really do. They didn't have a great spring game. There were a couple drops, but I think the blocking potential is there. Their pass catching prowess is pretty well established at this point, and they're all kind of unique players. And I'll go through all of them, including the guys who, you might have forgotten about are in the mix as well, or at least in the position room. But first, I'll tell you about Built Bar, and they are always coming out with amazing new flavors. And now they've outdone themselves with the mud pie. I'm not even kidding. You Duck fans know I'm a mint brownie guy through and through. Mud pie, even better. No joke. They are objectively better, and I still love mint brownie, but these mud pie bars are another level. And there's a mud pie puff too. It literally just tastes like a dessert. It's like a chocolate mousse dessert, and then the puff, you of course have a protein infused marshmallow in there. It's packed with a bunch of protein, only 150 calories and 8 grams of sugar. It is just the perfect on the go treat to keep you going as well. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. The tight end room is fine. The tight end room, would I have wanted Riley Williams? Would I rather have him than not on the roster? Yes, of course. You'd rather have a good player at any position, regardless of what the depth chart is looking like at this point in time, than you would not have him, because you never know if guys are going to transfer. You never know if guys will get hurt or if they'll leave early for the NFL. All that sort of stuff is going to play into any given position group, depending on how talented those guys are. But I love Oregon's tight end room right now. Okay, so you've got Terrence Ferguson, who, when he gets the ball in space, I think is the most explosive of the group. And when you talk about his playmaking ability, kind of reminds me a little bit of Greg Dulcich at UCLA. Maybe not quite as good in the open field at this point in time, but we also didn't see them fully unleashed, I think, last year. But Ferguson, the small number of plays we have seen where he catches the ball and is able to run with it, he's a really, really athletic dude and a decent blocker as well. He's a sophomore. Spencer Webb, he's a junior. I think he's got the best hands of the bunch. And then Maliki Matabao, who played a lot this past year, is basically a chef on the offensive line or tight end group, because he's out there making pancakes not infrequently. I mean, he is a big time blocker, caught a touchdown against Ohio State. I don't think that's his greatest strength, but you put him out there to run the ball. Obviously, he can catch that little pass on the end line with the tight end option route, the RPO. I hope we still do that in some sense. I really like those plays. They're always smart, and they were always called at the right time. But that was also Joe Moorhead and such. But I think Matabao is the best blocker of the group. But that's a sophomore, a junior, and a sophomore who are proven, capable, and versatile players. And Webb and Ferguson can both block. They're just not as good as Matabao because they're just not quite as big. But those guys were pretty highly rated recruits. Matabao, I think, the highest of the bunch, because he's about 6'6", 240, 250. I mean, he is a big, big dude. And I love the physicality he brings in the running game. But the two names that are still in the room that you probably haven't thought about in a little bit, and that's why I'm bringing them up here on the show, are Cam McCormick and Patrick Herbert. Now, Patrick Herbert hasn't really played yet. I don't know if he's caught a pass. He missed the 2020 season, whatever that was, with an injury, but he was a consensus 4-star recruit, and he was the number one recruit in the state of Oregon when he came out in the class of 2020. And so that reminds me a lot of Riley Williams. And yeah, it would have been great to get him, but we have a guy of similar caliber, at least from a recruiting standpoint, on the roster who just hasn't gotten a major opportunity to play because there's so many talented guys in front of him. And then Cam McCormick, gosh, I'm sure many of you Duck fans out there know that there is not a player probably in college football that's had worse luck with injuries than Cam McCormick. I don't know what the guy did. From all accounts, he's a good dude. He works really hard, and the football gods just keep punishing him, and it's unbelievably brutal. But he's still there, and so those are 5 guys. Herbert, unproven, but McCormick, when he plays, more than belongs on the field. Those are 5 guys that I look at and go, I'd feel good with just about any of them out there, and I want to see them all in some form or another. McCormick mostly for semi-sentimental reasons. Not that he isn't a good player, but I would love to see him have a game in a big spot this year where he has like 4 catches for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. That guy just absolutely deserves it. He worked all the way back from an injury for the 2021 season. He catches a big 3rd down and 8 conversion against Ohio State that led to a touchdown drive, the second 99-yard drive of that game, and he gets hurt on that play in some fluky way, misses the rest of the season. It's ridiculous, heartbreaking, all of the negative adjectives you can come up with there. But this is why I'm not too concerned about Riley Williams not coming there. Now, eventually it'll be a need, but in the immediate future, do you have to have bodies in there who you're going to develop for 2023 and 2024? The answer, I think, is no. You've got Ferguson in there. You've got Webb. You've got Matabao. I don't know what their NFL prospects would be. I don't think they're really that high. I think they're just pretty good college players who could maybe get onto a roster at some point. But do I think that Spencer Webb, who's a junior this year, and 19, 20, 20, yeah, so he's actually a 4th-year junior. Do I see him as somebody who might leave after the season for the NFL? Right now, it doesn't seem that way. He doesn't have the production because of the offense that he's been playing in primarily, but he doesn't have the production. He's got the physical traits perhaps, but does not have the stats to get the attention of teams and scouts to where he might be an NFL draft pick. I think that's why he didn't go in this year. And maybe if he has a really good year, he could go after this season. But again, I don't think that that's super likely. But Ferguson, a sophomore, Webb, a junior, Matabao, a sophomore, McCormick, I think he's a 6th-year senior, and then Patrick Herbert, a 3rd-year sophomore. So I think there's plenty of talent and depth there. Look out for Walker Lyons, a highly rated 4-star tight end in the class of 2023. It's got Stanford and some other big-time schools going after him. Maybe the Ducks ramp up the recruiting efforts at the tight end position there. But overall, I'm not concerned about the tight end room for this year and not for next year as well, because I think you got a lot of youth and you got a lot of talent as well. Speaking of recruiting, I mentioned earlier, Oregon right now, the favorite for Tyler Turner. Now, crystal ball predictions have been wrong before because Oregon was going to get Nico Iamaleava right up until we were not. Something changed at the last minute. I think we all kind of know what went down there. USC was the favorite for Josh Connerly. He ends up coming to the Ducks. That looks like a really good-looking move as the offensive line projects in the future. But he's a 4-star safety in the class of 2023. He's down to Oregon and Oklahoma, so hopefully he didn't watch the Alamo Bowl. I mean, there's no defense really being played on either side. So, I mean, Oklahoma did a little at the start, but then eventually Oregon started to pile on the points. But the Ducks also have crystal balls for 2023 3-star cornerback Colin Gill out of Texas and 4-star cornerback Caleb Presley out of Rainier Beach in Washington, I believe. I think same high school as Connerly. Don't quote me on that. I didn't look it up. I just, that was trying to put some dots together in my head. But of those 3 guys, including Tyler Turner, do I want to get as many talented guys as possible? Yes, of course. If I could only have one, I'd go with Caleb Presley. He's got the highest rating. I think he has the most hype around him as well. And I haven't checked. Actually, let me see who else is going after Presley, because I feel like that's somebody Washington would want to try to get because they, have been known for developing DBs at a high level, but it does not look like the Huskies are in the mix, so their recruiting struggles just kind of continue. But Oregon is one of the 4 favorites right now, according to 24/7, with Texas A&M, Alabama, and Michigan State. So you got 4 different states represented there in the pursuit of a guy from Rainier Beach High School in the class of 2023. So former teammate of Josh Connerly. Maybe that'll help. You never know. Another piece of recruiting news that is a little bit on the downer side. 5-star offensive lineman Kaden Proctor, who's the number 1 offensive lineman, projects as a tackle in the class of 2023. He cut the Ducks out. They were in the mix a little bit towards the end, but he's now down to Iowa and Bama. And I think, Adrian Clem and company are definitely going to need to be able to bring in some solid guys. Now, there are a couple names on the roster who, were recruits from past classes who just haven't quite seen the field yet. I would watch out for Bram Walden. He's a pretty highly rated 4-star out of the state of Arizona. He's on the roster, hasn't played. I don't know if he's played at all at this point in time. And with Oregon's offensive line being such a veteran unit this year, I hope that he doesn't have to play, because I would love to see, and injuries are always going to happen. So Connerly will probably see the field at some point, as will Dawson Jaramillo. But I mean, you give me a 5 of Alex Forsyth, Ryan Walk, Big Sala, TJ Bass, and Stephen Jones. I mean, put that up with any offensive line in the country. That's just such a great unit, and I'm very happy that they're all back. Connerly definitely projects as the left tackle of the future, and Proctor would have been a really, really great complement there. But there are other offensive line pursuits the Ducks are going after. Olaus Alanen, a 4-star offensive lineman who was on campus recently. There are other ways, but I'll be interested to see how that recruiting plays out in the coming months, because the coaching staff has to see what I'm able to see as well, right? Which is that after this year, you're gonna lose at least 4, maybe 5 of your starting offensive linemen to the NFL or graduation. And they're not just 4 or 5 offensive linemen who start. They have a lot of starts, and they're really, really good as well. And so it will be probably the greatest strength of Oregon again in 2022, but in 2023, you could be looking at a room that is just lacking experience, and hopefully they're not lacking talent, but they could be lacking experience. They could be lacking depth as well. And that could be a little bit more of a question mark. Other names to watch for on the recruiting trail: David Hicks, the number 1 defensive lineman in the class of 2023, according to, I think it was Steve Wiltfong. Somebody reputable said that Hicks was really impressed with his Oregon visit. He was on campus recently, and that would be probably the first major defensive recruit that Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy have landed so far. Cole Martin is a nice get, the son of Demetrius Martin, pretty highly rated 4-star DB in the class of 2023, but I think they're still looking for that first, kind of big landmark recruit in the class of 23. Lots of wins in 2022 with, Josh Connerly, Kyler Casper, Jalil Florence as well, but I think 23, you're still looking for kind of the big hallmark recruit at this point in time. There have been some players who I think can be good, but I think they're still looking for the splashy commitment right now. Colton Vasek, 4-star edge player from Westlake High School in Texas, or Westlake area in Texas. I forget which one. He was on campus recently. Olaus Alanen was on campus. 4-star offensive lineman Logan Reichert. That's another name to watch out for. And then there are other guys who I don't think have been on campus super recently, but have in the past, or at least been on Oregon's radar for a while. Mateo Uiagalelei, Oregon, as far as I can tell, remains in the running right there. 4-star defensive end, Neo Avery. He comes from Maryland. Let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure he's from the state of Maryland. You don't see a lot of guys from that part of the country coming all the way across. But yeah, Our Good Lady Council High School. That's a long name for a high school. Well, it's OLGC, Our Lady Good Counsel, OLGC. All right, so he's from the state of Maryland, class of 2023. Oregon has, kind of been tied to him. They're not super high on the trail right now. Kentucky, Maryland, and Penn State are all kind of the top options for him there. Jaden Wayne, of course, out of the Tacoma area. And then 4-star athlete Robert Stafford was tweeting about Oregon. He was on campus for a visit recently, and I love pictures from visits with players and coaches, and they're all decked out in some pretty dope looking uniforms. Like it's a fun thing to see, and always gives you those future projections of, boy, what kind of player could he be? Will he be like this guy? Could he be like that guy? And it's just it's fun. I love recruiting. I'm sure many of you do as well, and that's why you follow along here on the show, which I thank you for doing. Thanks for making this your first listen of the day. Go make Locked On Pac-12 your second. I'm hosting over there talking about the Conference of Champions. I appreciate everyone listening or watching the show. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.